In today's video, we are going to create an amazing poster design for our mayonnaise brand. Grab your mouse as we dive in. First things first, we are going to create a new document. Choose a solid color. We are going to create another solid color. With the mark selected, Ctrl-I to invert. With a soft hand brush, we are going to right click and increase the size. We are going to increase the opacity. Foreground is set to white. And we are just going to be painting back some. Now we are going to create a new layer. Grab a soft hand brush. Foreground is set to white. Opacity is set to 100. Then we click once. With the layer selected, we are going to set the blend mode to overlay. Create a new layer. The intensity is too much, so let's reduce the opacity for layer 1. Layer 2 selected. We are going to grab a soft hand brush. Foreground is set to white and we are just going to click once. With the layer selected, we are just going to transform that a bit. Ctrl-J to make a copy. Then we are going to set the blend mode of the copy to overlay and reduce the opacity. Let's grab our assets for this tutorial. Convert that to a smart object, Ctrl-T to transform, and we are just going to transform this a bit and rotate it. With this layer selected, we are going to select the last layer and copy all of them together. Ctrl-C to copy, Ctrl-V to paste. With this layer selected, Ctrl-T to transform. We are going to rotate it just this way and position it right here. Now we are going to grab the ladder. Ctrl-T, we right click and we are just going to distort it a bit. With the lip layer selected, we are going to make a copy, position it right here. Ctrl-T, right click and we are just going to warp this a bit. We are going to position it somewhere here. With the layer selected, Ctrl J to make another copy. We position it right here. Ctrl J to make another copy. So we have an extra. We are just undo. We are just going to position it somewhere here. We are going to create a curves adjustment layer right above all layers. This layer selected. We are going to create an exposure adjustment layer clipped onto the layer so the effect applies only to the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert with a soften brush. We are just going to right click and change the roundness. Change the angle as well a bit. We make the brush smaller by the left bracket key. We reduce the opacity. Foreground is set to white. And we are just going to be painting some shadows. We are going to create a curves adjustment layer clipped onto the layer. With the board selected, we are going to create an exposure adjustment layer clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soften brush, we are going to adjust the angle and the roundness a bit, and we are just going to be painting some shadows. We are going to create another exposure adjustment layer for more shadows. Ctrl I to invert, and we are just going to paint more shadows. We are going to create a curves adjustment layer clipped onto the layer. With the product selected, we are going to create curves adjustment layer clipped onto the layer so the effect applies only to the layer. With the layer selected, we are going to create a curves adjustment layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soften brush, foreground is set to white. We are going to be painting some shadows. We are going to create another exposure adjustment layer already clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soften brush, we are going to paint more shadows. Now we are going to create a solid color fill. So we are going to copy this as code. With the layer selected, we are going to set the blend mode to linear dodge add. Right click and we go for blending options. Let's cover this. Once we have it in position, then we are going to hold Alt and break the handles. So we have it somewhere around here. Then we hit OK. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With the brush tool selected, we are going to set hardness to 100, opacity to 100, foreground is set to white, and we are just going to paint this way. Now we are going to right click and set hardness back to 0, foreground is set to black now, and we are just going to erase just this way. We are just going to be erasing this way by painting. With the ladder selected, we are just going to repeat the same process for painting shadows and highlights. So we are going to speed this part. With the ladder selected, we are going to create a new layer just beneath it. With a soft-tone brush, we are going to right click. No, let's go to the brush settings. We are just going to set angle to 4. Set roundness to 18. Adjust the angle a bit. We are going to increase opacity. Set foreground to black. Then we are just going to click to create some contact shadow right there. Create a new layer. Then we are just going to create a new layer. Click once to create some contact shadows. Reduce the opacity. Create a new layer with a soft-tone brush. We are just going to create some contact shadow and reduce the opacity. Now we need a shadow below the product. So once we select the product, we are going to create a new layer just below it. With the layer selected, we are going to grab the polygonal lasso tool. Create a selection this way. Once you have a selection, you right click and we are going to fill it. So we are going to fill this with the foreground color, which is black. Then we hit OK. Ctrl D to deselect. With the move tool selected, we are going to position and adjust this a bit. With the layer selected, we are going to right click and convert this to a smart object. We apply Gaussian blur and set radius to 10. With the layer selected, we are going to create a mask. With the mask selected, we are going to grab the gradient tool. We are just going to drag this way to erase. With the mask selected, grab a soft-tone brush. Right click and change the angle a bit. Then you are just going to reduce the opacity. You can actually reduce the flow as well. So we are going to do exactly the same thing for the wooden board. We create a selection, then we are just going to be masking it with a gradient tool and paint some shadows and take away some. Now we are just going to paint more shadows to finalize everything. Now we are going to create an exposure adjustment layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soft-tone brush, Foreground is set to white and we are just going to be painting some bar. Once we have everything in place, we are just going to press Ctrl Alt Shift E to merge all layers. Right click and convert the layer to a smart object. Then we go for camera raw, so filter, camera raw filter. So we are just going to play with all these settings until we like the outcome. Once that is looking super cool, then we hit OK. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope to see you in the next one. Till next time, stay creative.